Hey, what is going on, guys? Nick here with Absolute MTG. I am back for 2017, and I am back with a whole lot of cool stuff to share with you guys. Today we're going to be talking about Aether Revolt. We're going to be talking about the spoilers that we have available thus far, and I guess before we address that, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool setup. We definitely spruced some stuff up here for the channel, and I definitely think you guys are going to really enjoy it. I'm always excited about doing new and cool stuff, so it's looking up. It's definitely looking up. After a hard year in 2016, I definitely think we're going to be a lot more privileged with the stuff that we get to do in 2017. And a lot of people have been asking, where have I been? School. School has been the biggest reason why I couldn't upload consistently and I couldn't get a lot of content out to you guys, but that's going to change. We're definitely going to be doing a lot more content here, so make sure that you're still subscribed to the channel, because YouTube sucks and they have that problem with people being unsubscribed to channels without their actual doing so, and I guess is that it? That's probably it. Let's see what we have to work with here for Aether Revolt thus far. Scrap Trawler, 3/2 for 3. Whenever it or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser converted mana cost. That seems pretty cool. I feel like every time an artifact gets printed, everybody just wants to jam it in Affinity. That's probably not a good mindset to have with cards that are just artifacts. I think this card, if anything, could be a good countermeasure for sideboards if you're playing like Affinity, because you might run into people that are just overconfidently sideboarding for Affinity and have a bunch of resources to be able to blow up your stuff. You can play Scrap Trawler and get some stuff back from your graveyard back to your hand. It won't be the most amazing card for you. I don't think it'll see play in Affinity, but it's cool. It's something to try out and it's something to work around with. What you guys will find with a lot of these cards that we discuss here, it's just opinions. I don't have hard facts. I don't have hard information to give you. These are just opinions, so try not to take everything way too seriously with what we talk about. Just enjoy it. Just sit back. You get to look at some cards with me. You get to see the stuff that's going on over here. You get to just have fun looking at new cards before they're actually released. Take it as that. That's what spoilers are meant to be. As far as Standard is concerned, I think this card is really, really cool for Standard because vehicles are such a huge thing right now. Like, vehicles are going to continue being good. There's no thought in my mind that vehicles won't see play. Vehicles will definitely see play, and this card having value off of immediately playing it and also having value off of other stuff interacting with it is just insane, I think. Quicksmith Rebel, although doesn't seem as impressive. This guy is a 3/2 for 4. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target artifact you control gains. Tap this artifact, deals 2 damage to target creature or player for as long as you control Quicksmith Rebel. That's a lot of text for something that doesn't seem really impressive for, like, constructed. I don't think this card's going to see any constructed play whatsoever, but I do think this card is going to be quite good in limited. Trophy Mage, on the other hand, does seem a little bit more playable, but in the scope of, like, EDH. I feel like EDH is definitely the best home for a Mage card of this quality and of this design. It's a 2/2 for 3, enters the battlefield, and you get to search for an artifact with CMC 3 and add it to your hand. So there's probably like a laundry list of cards for EDH that you just get to go through, and you get to find something cool and just add it to your hand and just set up a board state or a synergy that you already have crafted in your EDH deck and something you've already expected to play out for yourself. Yahenni's Expertise, although, seems a lot more cool for constructed. This card's 4 CMC, it's a sorcery speed card, all creatures get -3/-3 until the end of the turn, and you can cast a card with CMC 3 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Already I can see in Modern and in Legacy, I don't think as much Legacy, I think more in Modern, people are going to be trying to play Ancestral Vision for free. I think that's one of the biggest things that people want to go for. It's the most appealing one, it seems, and I don't think it's far-fetched that this card would see play in Modern just because of that. I think already the -3/-3 is like good enough. If this card was 3 mana with those effects, it would be broken. If it was 3 mana with -2/-2, it would still be broken. And I think even in Constructed and Standard, I think the card is good just because you get to get cards like Liliana for free, and if you're playing Control, getting an added bonus on top of like a almost Languish effect is definitely pretty good. Languish saw a lot of play. I don't think this card is going to be as abundant as Languish was. Like, Languish had a really good reason to see play, but we have to see how things shape out before we get to just hammer this card as being like absolutely necessary to play in like 3 or 4 copies in a Control deck. But I definitely think it's still pretty good. It's definitely a good complement to Fumigate in the format. We also get to look at Planeswalkers today, which is always interesting because I feel like people's assessments of Planeswalkers are always more biased than the rest of the cards. I think people want Planeswalkers to be better every single time than what they actually are, and I've been a culprit of that as well. I've definitely overhyped some cards in the past that probably shouldn't have gotten as much hype as they should have, but today we are going to be taking a look at 2 Ajanis, one of which comes in the actual set itself that you can pull out of packs, one that's going to be in the Planeswalker deck. The same case for Tezzeret. But the first one, this one is the one that you're going to get out of the set. So a set Ajani is Ajani Unyielding. This guy is 4 loyalty, 6 cost. +2 is reveal the top 3 cards of your library, put all non-land permanents revealed this way into your hand and the rest onto the bottom of your library in any order. That +2 is actually pretty good. That's a really good +2, and we're going to try and assess this card just by reading. So right off the rip, reading the +2, Naya good stuff has been a thing in Standard recently, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this in like a Naya good stuff deck where you're playing like a bunch of Planeswalkers, Gisela, Bruna, maybe Thalia's Lancers to fetch up like good legendary stuff, Naya legendaries, if you want to go with a certain subtype or something like that. -2, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. It's removal. That's pretty good. It's removal that sets Ajani to 2 loyalty immediately. It's also an answer to Emrakul. It's not a good one because they can still play your Ajani and they can target like one of your creatures. But the cool thing is he stays at 2 loyalty for your following turn, so you can actually go about exiling him the following turn with the like remaining loyalty that Ajani has. So that's actually pretty cool. So you get 2 exile uses out of it if that's immediately what you go for, and I think that's pretty awesome. The -9, put 5 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control and 5 loyalty counters on each other Planeswalker you control. That's pretty good. That's pretty good even still. I think this as a good curve out in a good stuff deck, a green-white X good stuff deck, I think this card is perfectly playable. Next we have Ajani Valiant Protector. So this is the one that you get out of the Planeswalker deck. So 4 loyalty, 6 cost, basically the same starting stats. It has a +2, +1, and a -11. So +2, we put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature. I already don't like the fact that it has to go on up to 1 creature, so you can choose 0 or 1. If it was like 2 creatures and you got to put like 1 and 1 or 2 and 0 or like anything like that, if you got to do it with 2 creatures, that would be great. I think it would be a lot better, but what can you do? So the +2, I'm not impressed by it. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. I'm so quick to just assume numbers are in here and the reading is hard. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Until you reveal a creature card. That's so specific. I'm not really impressed by that either. But then again, it's a Planeswalker deck, Planeswalkers, so it can't really be the most amazing. It's not going to be overpowered. -11, put X amount of +1/+1 counters on target creature. Target 1 creature where X is your life total. That creature gains trample until the end of the turn. The counters are cool. The fact that it gets trample is cool. The fact that it's 1 creature and it's not distributed as you choose, less impressive, but it's a Planeswalker card from a Planeswalker deck. Don't expect too much out of it. That's the biggest thing that I can say is don't expect way too much. Next we have Tezzeret, so we might as well go in order and take a look at set Tezzeret and then Planeswalker deck Tezzeret. So Tezzeret the Schemer, 5 loyalty, 4 cost. Ooh, I like 4 cost Planeswalkers. 4 cost Planeswalkers are where it's at. Create a colorless artifact token named Ethereum Cell with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool for the +1. That's kind of cool. You get a mana rock out of it that taps for any color. So it gives you the scope to play a 6 cost card or to mana fix for your following turn, or I guess even for the same turn you get to do something with it. So all right, it's not the worst thing. It could definitely be like far worse. -2. Target creature gets +X -X until the end of the turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. This one's a lot harder to be good just because you have to already have a bunch of artifacts on the battlefield for that to even get any sort of like good effect out for you, so I'm less impressed by it. -7, you get an emblem with at the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact you control becomes an artifact with base power and toughness 5/5. Do I think that's like insanely good or anything like that? I don't think that that's like the most broken thing. I think that because this Planeswalker starts at 5, goes up to 6, then goes up to 7, and then the next turn following that, you get to alt it. It's cool because you get to have this effect where you constantly are just turning something into an artifact. It's not the most impressive because you have to have like already a dedicated amount of artifacts that you have to play alongside it to make this card pay off. But even if your opponent's able to just like kill away your artifacts in general, then it's not great. This card doesn't give control decks good synergy, and it doesn't give control decks a good amount of options other than like the whole you get a mana rock thing. I don't know. I'm not that impressed with it. Tezzeret, Master of Metal, though. Let's take a look at this one. This one can't disappoint me. I'm sure this one can't disappoint me. It's 5 loyalty and it's 6 cost, so it's 6 mana and it's in a Planeswalker deck. It can't possibly be that bad. You'd be wrong. +1, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card. Alright, so you still have to play with artifacts. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Alright, that's not the worst thing. You get to peek until you hit an artifact and add it to your hand. I'm sure that the artifacts that you're going to be playing in your deck aren't god-awful. -3, target opponent loses life equal to the number of artifacts you control. Alright, again, it's kind of like the design of the last one. You have to play a bunch of artifacts to get a good effect out of it. And -8, gain control of all artifacts and creatures target opponent controls. And creatures. And creatures is the line of text that we wanted. Artifacts and creatures. You get everything that they have. You get all of their vehicles and their dudes. I think this card is much more playable than the last one that we had in the scope of playing a card like this in Control. I'm sure that there's going to be something that you can put together in terms of like brewing up an artifact deck where the set Tezzeret's going to be better for you. This one, that ultimate, is so much more appealing for me. Even though this card costs more mana and it's at 6, much more appealing for me. I like this card a whole lot better than the last one that we looked at. I think if I was playing this in a Control deck, this is the one that I would want in a Control deck. Master of Metal, and the name's badass. They definitely aren't playing around with the vehicles that they're trying to print for us for this set, though. It might just be this one that we get to see that's kind of like insane, but I think if they keep the pace with cards like this, the vehicles are probably going to be insane. Like, they're probably just going to be insanely powerful compared to other stuff that we get to play with. So, Heart of Kiran is a 4/4 for 2, Flying Vigilance Crew 3, not the most unfathomable thing to crew, because it's only 3, so you can still get like your Thalias, and you can still get your Veteran Motorists, and there's just a huge abundance of cards that can crew that so easily. Your Toolcraft Exemplars. You can remove a loyalty counter from a Planeswalker you control rather than pay Heart of Kiran's crew cost. Oh god, that card's good. Man, is this card good. This card is so good. This card is insane. The fact that it's a legendary artifact is the only drawback to this card. The design of this is broken. This card is so good. I actually get to be passionately excited about a card this far into the spoiler video. This card is really good. This is what I get excited about whenever I look at standard stuff. Is this card going to make its way into Affinity? I still think no. I don't think this card is good enough for Affinity. I think this card is still yet again another really good standard design card, just because we get to get the synergy out of this card where this is going to be both proactively aggressive and it gets to be very, very, very good defensively as well. So it's still going to die to Grasp effects. So Grasp of Darkness still gets to kill this at instant speed, but that hasn't been a problem thus far with vehicle decks just being insanely, insanely powerful at being aggressive. But Heart of Kiran is awesome just because you get to play your Gideons and then at instant speed you get to crew defensively. I think that's broken, especially because Gideon's a card that you don't even... The loyalty usually doesn't even matter on that card. If you're going to ult that card, you're going to ult it because chances are you're going to play it, ult it immediately, and swing for lethal. That's usually the case with that card. It's... Sometimes you have the cases where you play it, you make a token, next turn you are going to activate it, turn it into a dude, you attack with it, and you just keep pounding away, and then eventually you're going to go and ultimate it. Even still, Heart of Kiran, you having the potential to take away loyalty counters to crew this thing, that's insane. You don't even need to have creatures out there to crew it. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. This card is so good. I think this card isn't, like, just unimaginably broken as far as vehicle cards go for us. There's no thought in my mind. There's no way this card doesn't see play. There's absolutely no way this card doesn't see play. Our next card is Battle at the Bridge. It's an X and 1 black sorcery speed card with Improvise. So we have a brand new mechanic that we get to look at. Your artifacts can help you cast this spell. Each artifact you tap after you've done activating mana abilities pays for 1 mana. Target creature gets -X until the end of the turn and you gain X life. I like this card. I definitely like this card a whole lot. I think it's a really cool tool that control decks have at being able to give -X, and it's not like a destroy effect, so you get to get around the Selfless Spirit and Avacyn type enter the battlefield, or like activated abilities that would otherwise prevent your opponent from being able to keep their cards around. -X is definitely it's a cool iteration of this rather than making this card deal damage. And I don't know how practical Improvise is actually going to be in making you cast that card for less mana, but it's an option. It's definitely an option for you, and it's going to be something that's there that is going to be able to help you out, whether that is functionally applicable for you or not. But I think just as it is, X and 1 black, where it gives -X and lets you gain X, is sweet because it's a gain life effect. We have Dark Imitations, so 2 blue, black, and red. So it's 5 mana total. Sorcery speed. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, then discards a card. You return a creature or planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand, then draw a card. When you cast a Bolas planeswalker spell, exile Dark Imitations from your graveyard. That planeswalker enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on it. That's so much. That is so much text. That is so much of an effect to try and gauge whether that card is going to be really good or not. The first thing that I think about this card in looking at its design is this is designed to be a card that is fun and flavorful. It's designed to be a Planeswalker deck card, in fact, but it's not one. It's actually a card that's going to be printed in the set. Do I think this card is going to be proficient enough in being a card that you need to be playing it in Standard, or it's going to make an impact on Standard? No, but I think it's a fun card. I think there's a very big difference between the two. I think it's fun, but I don't think it's good. Disallow is our next card. So this is another one that I get to be excited about. I get to go up and down like a roller coaster ride in terms of excitement for cards that we discuss here. And Disallow, oh man, is this a good one. I love control cards. I have played my fair share of aggro this past season, but it's cards like this that definitely give me a second chance at playing some more control stuff. So it's instant speed, 1 in double blue, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. What does that remind you guys of? Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what it reminds you of. Void Slime. Although this card's better. It's literally better than Void Slime. We literally get to get a card that is easier to cast than Void Slime, and you just get to have it in Standard. That's insane. You get to have a good card like this in Standard that's going to counter whatever you have. Like, whatever you encounter, whether it's your opponent, like, trying to go through and, like, I don't know, maybe they cast an Emrakul, and you don't care about the actual Emrakul itself. You care about them taking your turn, so you counter the ability that Emrakul creates on cast, and you let the Emrakul resolve, and then you just nuke the Emrakul because who cares? You have all the answers in the world for an Emrakul. Disallow is so good. Man, I love that they're printing just broken stuff like Disallow into Standard, and they're creeping up the level of cards that we get to play with. And I'm not even being sarcastic about that. I think that naturally when you have broken cards like Aether Works Marvel, and you have Emrakul floating around, and the meta is just so shifted and skewed in the favor of synergies like that, you need good cards to be able to combat that, and Disallow is definitely it. That's my assessment of it. I think that's definitely it. Will this card see play in other formats? Don't be surprised if it does, because this is just a sweet effect that you have at that 3 mana slot. Man is that good. Pia's Revolution, 3 mana enchantment. Whenever a non-token artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your hand unless target opponent has Pia's Revolution deal 3 damage to him or her. This doesn't seem all that amazing to me. It doesn't seem like, again, I'll keep on going back to the affinity topic, but honestly, it's the same thing every single time a card that references artifacts is printed. Is it good enough for affinity? Is it going to see play in affinity? Do we jam it in affinity? Am I going to have to play against it if I play against affinity? It's always the debate. It's literally always that. It always comes back to that. People always will discuss that. And do I think that this card is going to be good enough? No, I don't. I absolutely don't think this card is going to be good enough. You can think I'm wrong until the day's done, and maybe I am going to be wrong, but I absolutely don't think that this card is going to see a whole lot of play. I think it's really cool. I think the design of it is insanely sweet, and I think that it's probably going to generate some cool synergies and some cool interactions to happen. I don't think that this is going to be anything that we have to sit down and go, listen, guys, this card is probably a little bit too good for what it's going to allow us to do. I don't think that it generates that type of a feeling, and I don't think the design is going to be capable of something like that. If this card, however, was 2 mana, if it was 2 mana, and that's a strong if, there's no possibility of that. If it was a 2 mana enchantment for 1 and 1 red and had that effect, that's different. That's definitely different. This card definitely gets put into its own perspective, and it gets put into its own scope of playability because it's 3 mana, and because it's 3 mana, it doesn't get to see a whole lot of play. Consulate Crackdown is a pretty sweet design for a card in terms of flavor. So it's an enchantment for 5. Whenever it enters the battlefield, exile all artifacts your opponents control until Consulate Crackdown leaves the battlefield. That's really sweet, just because in the scope of Limited, we've already seen that artifacts play a huge role, enough so that people are able to play a bunch of pre-sideboarded hate for artifact cards because they'll generously assume that your opponent is going to likely play a pretty good amount of artifacts, and the artifacts that they're going to be playing are probably pretty good. And even if they're bad, the card is still applicable. This one is a little bit less narrow in that it's not like a card like Fumigate where it's like, yeah, I'll get rid of one thing and I just get to get rid of it. This one is assuming that you are going to be playing against a lot of artifacts, and the artifacts that they're playing are probably going to be pretty good. So having a sweeper for artifacts is interesting. It's definitely really, really interesting. It also is another option for decks to be able to sideboard and construct it. It's another option for decks that are going to be playing a lot of artifacts, but at the same pace you don't have good options already. I don't think that's probably the case in general, but maybe in the case of Standard, whenever you have all of these good like Fumigate effects, these good Wrath effects, but your opponent is abundantly playing a bunch of vehicles and you can't get around them, I think that's where Consulate Crackdown actually ends up being good. We do get another Oath here, though. Oath of Ajani is an interesting one because this is the first multicolored Oath that we get to see. It is a legendary enchantment like the other Oaths that we have previously, and it's a green and a white. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. That's awesome. I like that. It's not a global anthem effect that just gets to sit on the battlefield and constantly checks and constantly powers up your team, but it's still pretty good. Planeswalker spells you cast costs 1 less to cast, so it makes all of your planeswalkers cheaper. That's pretty cool. But at the same pace, you have to play planeswalkers and creatures as well to get full value out of this. I don't think that that's like unforeseeable. I don't think that's unreasonable. Largely just because we already have like Gideon and Nissa together, and those together you can play like some kind of token strategy, and that's pretty cool. You can bridge the gap and play some more types of things, and you can try and widen your horizons by playing like red, and you get to play some Chandras, whether that's like the small 4-mana Chandra or if it's 6-mana Chandra. You have a lot of different things you get to play, and with Oath of Nissa, you get to play all the planeswalkers you want. You got to have all the fun in the world. You literally get to do whatever you want, man. There's no rules. It's literally like that commercial says. There's no rules. Let me take my shirt off. There's no rules. Our next card here is Quicksmith Spy. 2/3 for 4. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target artifact you control gains tap, draw a card for as long as you control Quicksmith Spy. Again, this is another card that I don't think is going to see any sort of implication for constructed play, but limited, that's awesome. Having a recurable source of drawing for limited is definitely insane. It's definitely really, really sweet whenever you just get to jump ahead of your opponent in terms of resources, and I think it's definitely something to consider whenever you're like opening packs. But past that, no. Yeah, past that, you won't even hear an assessment for constructed from me. The last two cards that we're going to be talking about are going to be in the Invention Masterpiece exclusive column. These are going to be the exclusive cards that you're going to get. I've chosen intentionally, for the sake of keeping this video even shorter than what it already is, I've chosen not to go over each one of the inventions that we have for this set, but rather we are going to look at the standard legal ones, because the first time that I looked at this, I had no idea that these cards were actually standard legal and they weren't reprints like the other ones where you have like the Pithing Needle, Arcbound Ravager, stuff like that. We'll do a separate video talking about those, but these ones are standard legal. So, alright, we just get to jump on into it. Paradox Engine, 5-cost legendary artifact. Naturally, you would assume it to be a legendary artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents you control. At least it's non-land. At least it's non-land where this card doesn't just get to be like inherently broken, inherently overpowered, and way too insane. I think there's a lot of cool synergies you get to have with your non-land permanents with tap effects that you get to exploit with it. And this card screams EDH. It just yells at it. It gets a nice... It gets a French horn and it blasts it to the army. It blasts it to the nation, just so that they know how sweet this thing is. There's a whole lot of potential stuff that you get to have with tap effects with this that are really, really cool. And the last card that we get to look at here is Planar Bridge. So 6-cost legendary artifact, 8 mana tap, and search your library for a permanent card and put it on the battlefield. Shuffle your library. Man, I haven't had a cool card like that in quite some time that I get to play in like Control. Man, is that sweet. You get to take any permanent that you have in your deck and put it on the battlefield for the free. Well, it's not actually free because you have to pay 8 mana for it and you have to pay 6 mana to put it on the battlefield in general, but each turn, your opponent not having a way to get rid of this and you being able to just throw and vomit something out onto the table that they probably can't deal with in general, that's really cool. And looking back at the Tezzerets that we looked at where we might have to find some cards that we need to play, we might have to find some broken artifacts that we need to play in our deck, even if like Planar Bridge is the only artifact that you play and you play the Tezzeret that just keeps on peaking until you hit an artifact, if this is the artifact that you find you get to add it to your hand, your opponent can't get rid of artifacts, so you just vomit that out onto the table, 8 mana tap, you get whatever you want for free. Yeah, man, who cares? We just get something for free. Doesn't matter how much mana we're paying for it, we get whatever we want. I think that design is insane. I think the design for this card is really, really cool. And definitely for the mana that you're like investing in it, it's appropriate. It's appropriate how much you have to pay for this for what you're getting off on the payoff. So let me know what you guys think. What do you think about the spoilers so far? What are your evaluations? What are your assessments of Aether Revolt thus far based on what we have available to us? Like I said, we aren't going over all of the inventions that we have available, just the ones that are going to be legal for us. But that's it, guys. That is our first look at Aether Revolt. That is the first spoiler look I have for you guys. I know this video was lengthy, but it's hard to do a video that doesn't end up being lengthy whenever you haven't like addressed the spoilers as they've been like released timely. So the future spoiler videos are definitely going to be a lot more aware of time constraints and much more appropriately sized in terms of how long I want to have them. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the video, and remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you guys enjoy this type of stuff. We are on the race to 100,000 subscribers here on the channel, and I think we can accomplish that by the end of the year. So any type of support that you guys can show for the channel, always greatly appreciated. Thank you guys again for joining me, and until next time, peace out.